My childhood best friend sabotaged my career for a decade, so I returned the favor on the biggest night of his life. I blamed myself for years. The email arrived at 11:43 p.m. on a Wednesday, and I almost deleted it. The subject line read, "You need to see this," from an address I didn't recognize, and my cursor hovered over the trash icon for a solid 5 seconds before curiosity won. I opened it. There was no message, just a video file labeled Liam_2014_raw.mp4 and a timestamp that made my stomach drop. June 2014. The month everything fell apart. The month I lost the creative director position at North Point Digital, the job I'd been groomed for since joining as a junior designer 3 years prior. The month Liam Winters, my best friend since we were 8 years old, got promoted to the exact role I'd been promised. I downloaded the file with hands that had started to shake before I even knew why. The video loaded. Security camera footage, black and white, slightly grainy. The North Point conference room, empty except for 2 figures. I recognized them immediately. Jeffrey Thornton, our CEO at the time, silver-haired and imposing even on a decade-old recording. And Liam, younger, leaner, wearing that navy blazer he used to think made him look professional. No audio, but I didn't need it. I watched Liam slide a folder across the table, watched Jeffrey open it, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern to something darker. Watched him flip through pages, maybe 8 or 10 of them. Then I watched Jeffrey's face harden as he looked at Liam, nodded once, and stood to shake his hand. The timestamp read 9:17 a.m., June 3rd, 2014. My final interview for creative director had been scheduled for 2 p.m. that same day. It was canceled at 10:15 a.m. via a terse email from HR. We've decided to move in a different direction. I'd blamed myself for a decade, convinced I'd somehow failed before I even got the chance. I'd spent 10 years thinking I wasn't good enough. 10 years watching Liam climb while I plateaued, rebuilt, and clawed my way back up at smaller agencies. 10 years attending his birthday parties, his engagement celebration, his wedding, smiling through gritted teeth while he offered career advice with the concerned tone of someone who genuinely wanted to help his struggling friend. And now, watching this silent footage of a betrayal I couldn't yet prove but could feel in my bones, I understood something fundamental had shifted. The anonymous sender had included one more file, a text document, just 2 lines. There are 6 more videos. He did this to others too. The gala is in 3 weeks. Your choice. I sat in my home office until sunrise, watching the video loop 27 times, and I started planning. The backstory is important because it explains why I trusted him completely and why the destruction was so thorough. Liam and I met in 3rd grade when his family moved into the house 4 doors down from mine in suburban Riverside. We were inseparable, the kind of friends who invented elaborate fantasy worlds, taught ourselves guitar together, and applied to the same colleges. We both wanted to work in advertising, both worshipped the same legendary campaigns, both dreamed of changing the industry. We were competitive, sure, but it was friendly, or so I thought. We ended up at different schools but stayed close, texting daily, visiting on breaks. After graduation, we both landed in Chicago's advertising scene and spent our mid-20s navigating the industry together, grabbing drinks after work, commiserating about demanding clients and impossible deadlines. When Liam got hired at North Point Digital in 2011, he pushed hard to get me brought in 6 months later. I thought it was brotherhood, loyalty. I owed him everything, I told people. He'd given me my break. At North Point, we were the dynamic duo. Liam in strategy, me in creative. We pitched together, won accounts together, stayed late collaborating on campaigns that won industry recognition. By 2014, the company was expanding, and Jeffrey announced they were creating a new creative director role. Everyone knew it was between me and another senior designer, Vanessa Park. Liam had already made senior strategist, and he told me repeatedly that this was my time, that I deserved it, that he'd put in a good word. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We'd been best friends for 16 years. I prepared for that interview like my life depended on it because, in a way, it did. I was 28, ambitious, hungry. This was the launching pad I needed. Then the cancellation email arrived, followed 2 hours later by the announcement that Liam was being promoted to creative director instead. A strategic pivot, they called it. They needed someone who understood both creative and strategy. It made sense on paper, but it shattered me. I tried to be happy for him. I swear I tried. Liam took me to dinner the night of the announcement, and I can still remember him saying he felt terrible, that he'd tried to advocate for me, that politics were involved above his head. He promised he'd mentor me, help me grow, ensure I got the next opportunity. I thanked him. Actually thanked him for taking my dream and promising to help me chase it later. The next few months were a special kind of torture. Watching him excel in the role I'd wanted, implementing ideas we'd developed together but crediting them as his own insights, slowly freezing me out of high-profile projects. By October, I was being assigned maintenance work on existing accounts while Liam led the new business pitches. When I tried to discuss it with him, he looked genuinely confused. "You seem stressed lately," he said. "Maybe you need some time to regroup, focus on fundamentals." Like I was the problem. Like I was imagining the systematic dismantling of my career. I left North Point in early 2015, accepting a lateral move to a smaller agency called Rivermark Creative. The pay was slightly less, the prestige significantly lower, but I needed a fresh start. Liam seemed supportive, helped me update my portfolio, even wrote me a recommendation that emphasized my steady reliability and collaborative spirit rather than my creative vision or leadership potential. I didn't see the poison in those words then. I just saw my best friend trying to help. For the next decade, I rebuilt slowly. Rivermark led to a better position at Ashford and Klein, which led to senior creative at Meridian Group. Good work, decent recognition, but never quite breaking through to the top tier. Meanwhile, Liam became an industry darling. He jumped from North Point to a VP role at a major national firm, then to chief creative officer at another. He won awards, he spoke at conferences, and through it all, we stayed friends. I went to his wedding in 2017, where he got emotional during the toast and thanked me for being his rock through everything. I was his best man. I stood there in an overpriced tuxedo, smiling for photos, convinced that my stalled career was my own fault and that Liam's success was deserved. The first video changed everything, but the other 6 files the anonymous sender provided destroyed any remaining doubt. I spent the next 72 hours barely sleeping, watching footage that dated back to 2012 and ran through 2019. Each showed the same pattern. Liam, meeting privately with senior leadership, sliding folders across tables or pulling up documents on laptops. Different companies, different executives, same basic choreography. I couldn't hear the conversations, but the body language told the story. Confusion shifting to concern, pages being reviewed with increasing alarm, handshakes that looked like agreements. The sender had included timestamps and context notes. Subject, Vanessa Park, presented fabricated plagiarism claims. Subject, David Reeves, presented altered financial records suggesting embezzlement. 3 different people at North Point alone. Then 5 more at his subsequent companies, each one a talented colleague who'd been positioned as competition. Each one destroyed right before a major promotion. And each one, based on the follow-up research I obsessively conducted, had seen their careers stall or crater entirely while Liam ascended. I needed proof beyond the videos. Security footage without audio could potentially be explained away, and I wasn't about to confront him or blow this up without being absolutely certain. I started with Vanessa Park, who I'd lost touch with after leaving North Point. LinkedIn showed she'd left the industry entirely and was now managing a bookstore in Portland. I sent a carefully worded message. Hey Vanessa, I know this is random after all these years, but I'm doing some reflection on our time at North Point. Do you remember what happened with your creative director interview? I'm trying to piece together some timeline confusion. She responded within an hour. I remember they told me I'd plagiarized campaign concepts from an external source, showed me side-by-side comparisons that looked damning. I tried to fight it, prove the work was original, but they'd already made their decision. It destroyed my reputation. Why? I asked if she remembered who brought the evidence forward. Her reply came fast. Liam Winters said he felt terrible but had a professional obligation. That friendship never recovered. The pattern was undeniable. David Reeves was harder to track down. He'd left advertising after North Point and, according to mutual connections, had dealt with serious legal issues related to the embezzlement allegations that eventually were dismissed for lack of evidence, but only after destroying his career and finances. I found him through his brother's Facebook and sent a message explaining I was documenting some concerning patterns from our shared past at North Point. He called me at 6:30 a.m. the next morning, his voice rough and angry. Liam Winters ruined my life, he said without preamble. Fabricated expense reports showing I'd been billing personal charges to the company, showed them to Jeffrey with this whole concerned friend act. By the time the investigation cleared me, I'd been fired, blacklisted, and my wife had left. That was 8 years ago. I'm a shift manager at a warehouse now. What the hell is this about? I told him I'd found evidence, that I was building a case. The silence on the other end lasted maybe 15 seconds before he said, "Whatever you're planning, I want in. That man needs to pay." The other victims' stories followed similar patterns, and each conversation made me angrier and sicker. Liam hadn't just sabotaged me. He'd built his entire career on destroying talented people, eliminating competition before it could threaten him, using fabricated evidence and his boyish, trustworthy demeanor to position himself as the reluctant whistleblower while talented colleagues burned. And I'd been too close to see it, too trusting. I'd spent a decade blaming myself for not being good enough when the truth was that I'd never had a chance. None of us had. The anonymous sender, who I still couldn't identify, had sent one final message. The Agency Leaders Gala, 3 weeks from Friday. Liam is receiving the Innovator's Legacy Award for his contributions to creative advertising. Lifetime achievement at 39. 500 industry leaders attending. Your choice what to do with this information, but timing matters. I understood the implication. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposure, justice, and stopping him from destroying anyone else. I had 21 days to plan, verify, and prepare. My current position at Meridian Group was solid, but not flashy. I was a creative director now myself, having finally broken through that ceiling 2 years prior, but I operated in Liam's considerable shadow. The gala was the industry's biggest annual event, where awards were handed out, deals were made, and reputations were built or demolished. Liam's award was the evening's centerpiece, celebrating his transformative vision and ethical leadership in creative development. The irony burned. I needed allies, documentation, and a delivery method that couldn't be ignored or buried. I started by reaching out to the other victims. Vanessa flew in from Portland. David drove up from Indianapolis. The others joined via secured video calls. Together, we built what one of them, a former legal consultant named Patricia Holloway, called an airtight dossier of systematic fraud. 8 victims, 6 companies, 12 years of evidence. We had the security footage, but we needed more. Patricia had kept everything from her own termination at Liam's third company, including the fabricated performance reviews he'd submitted and the actual performance reviews her other supervisors had written, which contradicted his claims entirely. David had the dismissed embezzlement court documents showing the charges were baseless. I tracked down the external source Vanessa had supposedly plagiarized from, which turned out to be a website Liam himself had created and backdated, using archived screenshots to prove the timeline manipulation. Each victim contributed pieces, and the picture that emerged was of someone who'd studied corporate systems well enough to exploit them. He understood that HR departments were risk-averse, that executives trusted employees who brought concerns forward discreetly, and that once someone was marked as problematic, companies preferred quiet removal over messy investigations. He'd weaponized institutional dynamics with surgical precision, and he'd done it to his best friend without blinking. The question of who'd sent me the original videos haunted me until the second week of planning, when I got a call from a number with a 312 area code. Chicago, I answered carefully. Is this Nathan? A woman's voice asked. When I confirmed, she continued. My name is Rebecca Caldwell. I was Jeffrey Thornton's executive assistant at Northpoint from 2010 to 2016. I'm the one who sent you the files. She explained that she'd kept copies of security footage after noticing a pattern, that she'd felt complicit by staying silent but had been too afraid of legal retaliation to come forward. I watched him destroy good people, she said, and I watched you spiral after 2014, blaming yourself for something that wasn't your fault. When I saw he was getting the Legacy Award, I couldn't stomach it anymore. You deserve to know. I asked why she'd waited so long. Honestly, I was protecting myself. I have a family. But my daughter starts at advertising school next fall, and the thought of her entering an industry where people like Liam thrive made me sick. Someone has to stop him. Rebecca became an unexpected asset. She still had contacts throughout Chicago's advertising community and helped identify which media outlets and industry leaders would be at the gala. She suggested we bring in Catherine Morrison, an investigative journalist who'd covered corporate fraud cases and had a reputation for verified, devastating exposés. I initially resisted bringing in media, worried about losing control of the narrative, but Patricia convinced me. You expose this privately, it gets buried in settlements and NDAs, she argued. You expose this publicly, at the industry's biggest event, with proof and witnesses, it becomes too big to contain. He doesn't just lose his award, he loses everything. Catherine agreed to meet after I sent her a preview of our documentation. She showed up to the coffee shop with a recording device, a legal pad, and the sharp-eyed focus of someone who'd seen terrible things, but still cared about getting the story right. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Catherine reviewed every piece of evidence, interviewed each victim via video call, cross-referenced timelines, and verified facts with the methodical precision of someone who understood that accusations of this magnitude required bulletproof sourcing. When she finished, she sat back and said one word. Damn. Then, this is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in professional settings. You have testimony, documentation, video evidence, and a clear pattern across multiple companies. But you understand what you're about to do, right? You're not just taking down Liam. You're exposing systematic failures in how these companies vet concerns, and some powerful people are going to look complicit or incompetent. There will be fallout beyond him. I understood. I didn't care. Liam had spent 12 years destroying people to elevate himself. He'd stolen my career, my confidence, my 20s. He'd done worse to others. If some executives who'd enabled him through negligence or indifference faced consequences too, that seemed like justice, not collateral damage. Catherine had a contact at the Chicago Tribune and another at Ad Age, the industry's primary trade publication. She proposed a coordinated release, prepare the full investigative piece in advance, but hold it until after the gala exposure. You want maximum impact? She explained. Expose him at the event with undeniable proof, in front of his peers, at the moment of his greatest triumph. Then the story breaks nationally the next morning, with full context and documentation. He can't spin it, can't hide, can't claim it's a personal vendetta when you have 8 victims, multiple companies, and verified evidence. We spent the next week preparing. I wrote a 7-minute presentation. Patricia compiled the evidence into a digital file that could be displayed, and Catherine drafted her article. The victims prepared statements. Rebecca obtained the gala's AV specifications and seating chart. Everything was choreographed to the minute. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy around Liam. We'd drifted somewhat over the past few years as his career accelerated, but we still texted occasionally, still met for drinks every few months. He'd invited me to the gala as his guest, actually, a gesture that at the time I'd found touching and now understood, was pure ego. He wanted witnesses to his coronation, even the ones he'd crushed. I accepted the invitation with enthusiasm, telling him I wouldn't miss it for the world. True, but not in the way he imagined. We met for lunch 8 days before the event, and I watched him with new eyes. The easy smile, the self-deprecating jokes about not deserving the award, the way he asked about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. He was good. Maybe he even believed his own lies by now, had rewritten his history so thoroughly that the destroyed careers were just unfortunate casualties of a competitive industry, nothing personal, certainly nothing he'd orchestrated. "You've been a real one through all of this," he said over appetizers, reaching across the table to grip my shoulder. "Seriously, Nathan, I know my success hasn't been easy for you to watch, and I respect how you've handled it with class. That says a lot about your character." I wanted to vomit. Instead, I smiled and raised my glass. "To your success," I said. "You've earned everything you've got." The truth of that statement hung between us, visible only to me. He had earned it through lies, fabrication, and betrayal. Every award, every promotion, every accolade was built on the broken careers of people who'd trusted him. The bill came, and Liam grabbed it. "My treat," he insisted. "Legacy Award winner's privilege." I thanked him, watched him pay with the black card from his executive account, and thought about David working warehouse shifts and Vanessa managing a bookstore. The rage was clean and focused. 3 more days. The agency leaders' gala took place at the Riverside Grand Hotel, a gleaming monument to corporate excess with crystal chandeliers and a ballroom that could fit 500 people comfortably. I arrived at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes after doors opened, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that supposedly contained notes for a toast. Inside was actually a USB drive with our presentation and a printed backup of the evidence. Rebecca had worked her contacts to get me on the AV team's approved list, explaining I was helping Liam with a surprise tribute video. The actual surprise was going to be significantly different. The ballroom was already filling with the industry's elite, senior executives, award-winning creatives, and the kind of people who shaped advertising trends and made 7-figure decisions. I spotted Liam near the front, holding court with a cluster of admirers, looking relaxed and happy in an immaculate tuxedo. The format was dinner first, then awards. Liam's Legacy Award was scheduled for 9:15 p.m., the final and most prestigious of the evening. I had to sit through 2 hours of networking, small talk, and mediocre chicken while my heart hammered against my ribs. Patricia was there, seated 3 tables away, looking calm in a way I envied. Catherine was in the media section with her recording equipment, ready to capture everything. David had wanted to attend, but agreed it was too risky. Liam might recognize him. Instead, he was watching via the live stream from his hotel room. The other victims were on standby, ready to release coordinated statements the moment our presentation concluded. At 8:30, I excused myself to the restroom and met Rebecca in a service corridor. "A V team is briefed," she whispered. "You'll have full control of the screens from the stage. Security has been told you're doing a tribute. You have maybe 7 minutes before they realize what's happening and try to cut you off. Make them count." The preliminary awards concluded on schedule. At 9:12, the gala's host, a prominent industry veteran named Gregory Ashford, took the stage to introduce Liam's segment. "Tonight, we celebrate not just creative excellence, but the kind of ethical leadership that elevates our entire industry," Gregory began, reading from prepared remarks that made my jaw clench. "Liam Winters has spent his career mentoring colleagues, championing innovation, and demonstrating that success and integrity aren't mutually exclusive." The applause was thunderous. I watched Liam stand, humble smile in place, and make his way toward the stage. Gregory handed him the award, a heavy glass sculpture that caught the light beautifully, and Liam began his acceptance speech. He thanked his team, his family, his mentors. He talked about the importance of collaboration and supporting fellow creatives. He was 3 minutes in when he said, "I've been blessed to work with incredible people, some of whom are here tonight, including my oldest friend, Nathan Pierce. Stand up, Nathan." The spotlight found me. 500 pairs of eyes turned. I stood slowly, and Liam gestured toward me with warmth that looked absolutely genuine. "Nathan and I have been friends since we were kids," he continued. "We came up in this industry together, and watching his growth has been one of the privileges of my career. This award isn't just mine, it belongs to everyone who believed in collaborative excellence." The applause felt like mockery. I remained standing as Liam continued talking, and when he finally concluded with another round of thanks, I made my move. I walked toward the stage, portfolio in hand, while Liam looked momentarily confused. Gregory started to intercept me, but I spoke loudly enough for the microphone to catch. "Liam, I prepared a tribute video. Would you mind if I shared it?" His confusion shifted to pleased surprise. "Of course, Nathan, you didn't have to do that." He stepped back, giving me access to the podium, and I handed my USB drive to the AV technician who'd been briefed to follow my instructions. "Thank you all for your patience," I began, gripping the podium to keep my hands steady. "This presentation is about the real story of Liam Winters' career, the story of how he built his success." The screens behind me flickered to life, showing the title slide. The pattern: Systematic Sabotage, 2012 to 2019. I heard the audience shift, uncertain murmurs beginning. Liam's smile froze. I clicked to the next slide. The first security video, time-stamped and labeled. June 2014. Liam presents fabricated evidence to Northpoint Digital's CEO, claiming I plagiarized work. My creative director interview is canceled 2 hours later. Liam receives the promotion instead. The video played, silent but damning. I let it run for 30 seconds while the audience watched Liam slide that folder across the table. Then I moved to the next slide. Vanessa Park, same company, same year. Fabricated plagiarism claims, career destroyed. Her photo appeared beside the security footage. The murmurs grew louder. I moved through the victims systematically. David Reeves, fabricated embezzlement. Patricia Holloway, falsified performance reviews. 8 people total, 6 companies, 12 years of evidence. Each slide showed the security footage, the fabricated documents, and the actual proof of innocence we'd compiled. My voice stayed level, professional, factual. This is not a personal vendetta, I said. This is a pattern of fraud. Liam Winters built his career by systematically destroying talented colleagues, using fabricated evidence and his trusted position to eliminate competition. We have testimony from 8 victims, documentation from 6 corporations, and video evidence spanning 12 years. The full dossier has been provided to the Chicago Tribune and Ad Age and will be published tomorrow morning. The room had gone completely silent except for the video audio now playing, actual testimony from David describing the false accusations and their impact on his life. Liam had gone pale, standing frozen at the edge of the stage. Security started moving toward me at the 5-minute mark, but Gregory Ashford raised a hand to stop them. He was watching the screens with an expression of growing horror, and I realized he was probably calculating his own organization's liability for honoring someone like this. I clicked to my final slide, a list of all 6 companies and the dates Liam had committed fraud at each, alongside a QR code linking to the full evidence file. You can verify everything I've shown you, I said directly to the audience. Every victim is willing to testify. Every document can be authenticated. This man destroyed careers, families, and lives to advance himself, and he did it with a smile and claims of ethical leadership. I looked at Liam, who seemed unable to speak or move. You told me tonight that I handled watching your success with class. The truth is, I blamed myself for a decade for not being good enough. But I was always good enough. You just couldn't win without cheating. The aftermath happened in stages. First, shocked silence. Then someone started a slow clap that didn't catch on because this wasn't a movie, and public exposure of fraud doesn't get applause. Then chaos. Reporters surged forward, phones out, shouting questions. Liam finally found his voice and tried to claim the videos were doctored, that this was a setup, but his denials sounded hollow against the weight of evidence. Gregory took the microphone and announced the event was concluding early, that the organization would be conducting a full review. Security escorted me out, not roughly but firmly, and I went willingly. I'd said what I needed to say. Catherine caught up with me in the lobby, eyes bright with professional excitement. The live stream cut before they could stop you, she said. About 400,000 people just watched that presentation live. It's already going viral on Twitter. His career is over. I felt the weight of 10 years lift slightly. Not gone, but lighter. The story broke everywhere by morning. Chicago Tribune ran Catherine's full investigative piece with the headline, Advertising Executive's Decorated Career Built on Systematic Fraud. Ad Age published simultaneously with their own investigation, having verified our evidence independently. By noon, Liam's current employer had placed him on indefinite leave pending investigation. By evening, 3 previous employers had announced internal reviews. The Legacy Award was formally rescinded, a rare and humiliating public retraction. Social media was merciless, with industry professionals sharing their own experiences of Liam's subtle undermining, patterns they hadn't recognized until seeing the larger picture. Several mentioned interviewing for positions he'd gotten, describing similar last-minute concerns raised about their qualifications. The scope of his fraud expanded as more people came forward. He'd destroyed more than 8 careers. We'd just found the ones with evidence. The legal fallout took months to fully materialize. 3 of the companies Liam had worked for faced lawsuits from former employees whose terminations could now be proven fraudulent. Liam himself was charged with multiple counts of fraud and forgery related to the falsified documents. His attorney tried to paint him as a competitive professional who'd made errors in judgment, but the video evidence and testimony from 8 victims made that narrative impossible. In November, 8 months after the gala, he accepted a plea agreement. 5 years probation, substantial restitution payments to his victims, permanent prohibition from working in advertising or related fields, and a public allocution where he had to detail his actions on the record. I watched the hearing via video feed. He looked smaller somehow, the polish stripped away, and when he read his statement admitting to systematic sabotage of colleagues' careers, his voice shook. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was something. The victims' experiences diverged after exposure. David used his portion of the restitution to finish a degree he'd started before Northpoint, and last I heard, he was teaching marketing at a community college and finding peace in helping students avoid industry pitfalls. Vanessa stayed with her bookstore but started consulting part-time for ethical advertising collectives, using her experience to help build better industry standards. Patricia leveraged the case into a corporate ethics consultancy, helping companies identify and prevent the kind of institutional failures that had enabled Liam's fraud. Rebecca left her assistant position and now works in HR compliance, determined to fix the systems that failed us. Catherine won awards for her investigative series on corporate fraud in creative industries. Each of them found ways to transform the damage into purpose, which seemed like the closest thing to healing we'd get. My own career changed in unexpected ways. The exposure brought attention I hadn't sought, interview requests and speaking invitations about workplace fraud, industry ethics, and the psychological impact of systematic sabotage. Some saw me as a whistleblower, others as someone who'd aired dirty laundry publicly instead of handling it privately. I didn't care much about the judgment. Meridian Group stood by me throughout, and within a year, I was promoted to executive creative director with explicit encouragement to rebuild the kind of collaborative culture Liam had destroyed. I used the platform to mentor young creatives, particularly those who seemed to be struggling or doubting themselves, knowing how easily talent can be crushed by someone with the right access and wrong intentions. The work felt meaningful in ways that chasing awards never had. I'd lost a decade but gained clarity about what mattered. Liam and I never spoke again after the gala. He sent one email 3 weeks later, a rambling attempt at explanation that blamed pressure, competition, and a series of bad decisions that snowballed. "I never meant for it to go this far," he wrote. "I know you won't forgive me, but I need you to understand I'm not a monster. I just wanted to succeed." I deleted it without responding because there was nothing to say. You don't accidentally fabricate documents 8 times across 6 companies over 12 years. You don't accidentally destroy lives. He made deliberate choices repeatedly, and the fact that he could write that email with apparent sincerity told me he still didn't grasp the magnitude of what he'd done. Maybe he never would. That wasn't my problem anymore. I'd spent enough time trying to understand why someone I'd trusted completely had betrayed me so thoroughly. The answer didn't matter. The exposure did. A year after the gala, I was having coffee with a new junior creative at Meridian, a talented kid named Oliver, who reminded me uncomfortably of myself at 25. He'd mentioned struggling with confidence after a pitch hadn't gone well, convinced he wasn't cut out for the industry. I told him about Liam, about the decade I'd spent blaming myself for a sabotage I couldn't see. "The industry wants you to think it's a meritocracy," I said. "That talent and hard work are enough. Sometimes they are. But sometimes there are people who succeed by making sure others fail, and the system protects them because they're good at looking trustworthy. That's not your fault. That's not a reflection of your worth. Your job is to keep creating, keep improving, and build the kind of career that doesn't require destroying other people." He asked if I regretted exposing Liam publicly rather than handling it privately. I thought about the 400,000 people who'd watched that live stream, the dozens of others who'd come forward with their own stories, the companies that had reformed their review processes because of the scrutiny. "I regret trusting him for so long," I said. "I regret blaming myself when I should have questioned why my career stalled so suddenly. But exposing him? No. He built his success on broken people, and he would have kept doing it until someone stopped him. Private confrontation would have led to settlements, NDAs, and him resurfacing somewhere new. Public exposure meant accountability, consequences, and maybe prevention. If one talented creative avoids working for the next Liam Winters because they learned to recognize the patterns, it was worth it." Oliver nodded slowly, processing. Then he asked what I'd say to Liam if I saw him again. I'd thought about that question many times, imagined scenarios, rehearsed speeches. The truth was simpler than I'd expected. Nothing. There's nothing left to say to someone who spent 12 years proving our friendship meant nothing to him. He's just someone I used to know. The story's over. Except it wasn't. Not completely. Stories like this don't end cleanly. They ripple outward, creating consequences and changes that extend beyond the immediate players. The advertising industry did implement some reforms, better verification processes for internal complaints, more rigorous background checks, mandatory ethics training that actually meant something. Several professional organizations developed whistleblower protections and verification systems for fraud allegations. Not perfect, but better. And sometimes, late at night when I'm working on a campaign or mentoring someone struggling with confidence, I think about that moment on the gala stage when I clicked through those slides and watched Liam's face crumble as his fabricated empire collapsed. The part of me that's still angry wants to say it felt triumphant, that revenge was sweet and satisfying. The honest part acknowledges it mostly just felt necessary and sad. I'd lost a decade to someone who'd pretended to be my best friend while systematically destroying my career for his own advancement. I'd blamed myself, questioned my abilities, and rebuilt from rubble I didn't deserve. The exposure gave me back my reputation and my confidence, but it couldn't return those 10 years or erase the damage to the 8 people whose lives he'd derailed. Justice isn't restoration. It's just accountability, recognition that the truth matters and that some betrayals are too fundamental to ignore. Liam had gambled that our friendship, his charm, and the industry's tendency to protect successful people would shield him indefinitely. He'd bet wrong. And standing in the lobby of the Riverside Grand Hotel at 9:37 p.m. on that Friday in October, watching security escort me out while reporters shouted questions and Liam's world disintegrated behind me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a decade. Not happiness exactly. something closer to peace. I'd told the truth. That was enough. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.